All right, fantastic. Well, welcome everyone to our Business Sustainability Collaborative Lunch and Learn series. We're absolutely thrilled to host this first virtual Lunch and Learn, top 5 lessons to help you change the world from 50 people who have, along with Christina Marie Noel. If I haven't had a chance to meet you yet, my name is Jessica Thomas. I'm the director of the Business Sustainability Collaborative in the Poole College of Management at North Carolina State University. Our vision is to prepare the next generation of leaders to use business as a force for good. We do that work through curriculum development, embedding sustainability across the curriculum, working with our faculty on applied research that can inform industry, and through experiential learning and engagement. And we think this Lunch and Learn is an excellent example of that. We're excited to co-host this event in partnership with our NC State Net Impact chapter, and you're going to have a chance to meet some of our Net Impact leaders over the course of this Lunch and Learn. Net Impact is our student club that's part of a network of over 300 chapters around the world that are focused on preparing students for careers using business to drive social and environmental change. And so we're thrilled to co-host this event along with Net Impact. Just another quick housekeeping, couple quick housekeeping reminders. Again, make sure that you are on mute. If you would prefer not to have yourself recorded, we are recording this session. Make sure to turn your video off. And also we are inviting folks in the true spirit of what we hope will be connection, engagement, and learning. We're inviting you as part of our welcome to share your lunch with us. So you can share your lunch in the chat. Just let us know what you're having for lunch during this Lunch and Learn. You can also share your chat on social media. You can see the hashtags there. So share with us your lunch, what you're eating, what's sustaining you during what we know are some very challenging times for everyone. But we're hoping to provide you with some sustenance, some inspiration, some tangible tools, and an opportunity to connect, to really give us a chance to think collaboratively about how we can use business as a force for good and hear inspiration from really a thought leader in this space. In the spirit of leadership development, I'm going to introduce Jordan Bowman, who's going to be the facilitator for this Lunch and Learn. Jordan's going to take us through a connection exercise, and he's going to introduce our speaker, Christina Marie Noel, and give her a chance to share her inspiration and her lessons learned. I'm really excited that Jordan, who's part of our Business Sustainability Collaborative team, he's a BSc associate, which is part of our student leadership team. He's an undergraduate student in the Poole College of Management, and also serves on the leadership team of our NC State Net Impact chapter. Jordan's studying entrepreneurship and nonprofit management. I'm really excited to hand it over to him for him to have an opportunity to really develop his leadership skills and to facilitate this workshop. So many thanks again to everybody from joining us from around the world. We've got people registered, we know, from Russia, from as far away as Switzerland, from all over North Carolina and the US. So we're absolutely thrilled to have you joining us. And I'm going to hand it over to Jordan. Thanks so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. Yeah, wow, 77 people right now in this meeting. So thank you guys for taking time out of your busy and beautiful Tuesdays to join us. We're going to get started with a little bit of what I call connection before content. There's a friend of mine who's kind of pioneered this philosophy, but before we get into the content, by Christina, I'd love to give us all an opportunity to connect. So it's real simple. In the chat, if you guys can all open up the chat real quick, I dropped a link. And so if you have an older version of Zoom, you might have to copy and paste the link into your browser. And if you're on the phone, don't worry. We're gonna have some of your breakout room buddies help you out here. So you can open up the link. In a couple minutes here, we're gonna launch into 15 different breakout rooms with a handful of people in each one. And I want you all to share your name, where you're from, and an answer to one of these questions in the slide deck. And if you can't access the slide deck, we're just going to ask that someone pick a question and ask you for your intro question. So thank you for participating in that bit of our adventure here on our Lunch and Learn. I want to thank everyone for showing up and for kind of sharing. And I know some of the people in my group shared some things that were more vulnerable, and I really got to get to know people a little bit more. So I appreciate everyone doing that. So let's see here. Next, we're gonna move on to the keynote. Christina Noel has an amazing keynote for us. I've met Christina through Starting Block, which is a kind of leadership development organization, bunch of change makers all over the world, really great group of folks. Christina definitely stands out in that group. She is a champion, B Corp champion. She helped found the Be Local North Carolina group here, and she's worked with tons of B corporations across the country, and I think across the world. Folks like Ben and Jerry's. In 2018, she started a project called the Arc Benders, where she interviewed 50 people who were changing the world. And out of that, I don't know how she kind of got it down to just 5 lessons. But we're going to be learning a little bit more about those 5 lessons. In addition to all of that, just to add more on to her, she started an accelerator called Figure Your Shit Out. And it's a really awesome, I think it's a 6-month program where folks are able to take their concepts, their solutions, and transform them into companies and, working solutions and ideas. So without further ado, want to introduce Christina, and thank you for being here today.
I need to unmute. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, and I'm so excited to be here. So all of this starts in 2008 when I graduated from college, and the economy looked a bit like a dumpster fire. So anyone who's a little bit stressed out right now, just as a heads up, this is not the first time that we've seen economic turmoil. Unlike many of my fellow college grads, I thankfully managed to land a job at a healthcare consulting firm. And it was pretty well paying, it was stable. And when I started, I was pretty excited about the prospect of helping hospitals. It turns out, though, that the company had a very niche focus. So we specialized in identifying underpayments for hospitals. And what that means is hospitals get paid by insurance companies, but sometimes insurance companies don't pay them correctly. And so our job was to make sure that hospitals were being reimbursed, and sometimes spending hours upon hours on the phone with insurance companies when I first started out, trying to get the money back. So I don't know if many of you have spent hours on the phone with customer service reps, but it was it was one way to enter the workforce. And through that work, I learned a ton of amazing lessons. And yet at the same time, it was never the right fit. And so I knew that this wasn't the job for me long-term, but I wasn't really sure what to do with my life. And so I did what most 20-something people do. I went to the bar. One afternoon, you should be 21. One afternoon, I was sitting on a patio in the Virginia Highlands neighborhood of Atlanta with a friend. And that's when my friend asked me a question that absolutely changed my life. I was telling them, I don't know what to do with my life. I'm not sure what direction to go. And they said, Christina, what would you do if you didn't have to worry about money? And I mean, it stopped me in my tracks. I had absolutely never thought about that. I graduated in 2008. My parents raised me to be really financially conservative. They were like, go to college, get a great job. And, and that's what you do. And so what that question was really about, though, wasn't just about not caring about money. It was about, what would you do if you weren't afraid? What would you do if you weren't afraid that you had enough? And I immediately knew the answer. I knew that I wanted to help people. So up until that point, when I moved to Atlanta, I didn't have many friends. And so I'd started volunteering a lot, and I really loved giving back. And the one thing that I did love about my first job was they had a social responsibility effort. And through that, I actually got to help manage a relationship with a nonprofit that saved lives. So the nonprofit ships surplus medical supplies to hospitals across the world. And what I realized at that moment was I was like, I want every day of my life to matter. I want to create impact every single day. And I really, if I'm being so bold, I wanted to change the world. And it turns out I'm not alone in thinking like that. 76% of millennials consider a company's social and environmental impact before deciding where to work. For those of you still in college, you will learn that you spend more time at work than you do with friends and family. And because of that, why should your time at work not be about more than just making a profit? Why shouldn't you be making an impact for that work, at least in some way, shape, or form? The good news is I was able to achieve my dream. I went back to grad school. I landed a job that actually allowed me to help save lives. And you might think that that's the end of the story, but it's not. For those who know me, I'm not very satisfied with the status quo. And I eventually reached a point that even though I was doing really meaningful work, I still wanted more. And so I decided to pick up a new habit. I had always wanted to learn photography. And because of that, growing up, I had learned music. And I learned that anytime I play flute, I'm a total nerd. And I learned that to become great at anything, you have to practice a ton. And so I knew that to become a good photographer, I was going to have to take a lot of photos. At the same time, when I read the news, I was pretty uninspired. In fact, it was often downright depressing. And so I realized an opportunity. I decided that I was going to take photos of the people in my life that inspired me, and I was going to tell their stories so that I could share the good news and share more of my reality, which was one that was really hopeful. And from that, that's how the Arc-Benders Storytelling Project began. The name Arc-Benders is inspired by the quote, "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." This quote comes from Theodore Parker, who was an abolitionist minister, and it was later made famous by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. What I love about this quote is it's the idea that things do inherently get better. But what the quote doesn't say is that we have to be the ones to bend the arc. We have to be the ones to drive positive change. And so arc benders are everyday superheroes who are changing their communities without the expectation of any reward. What I didn't know is I was going to go on to interview 50 arc benders when I started. I just had planned to learn photography. But what I learned through the lens of my camera is what world-changing leadership looks like. And that's why I'm so excited to be here today to share the top 5 lessons that I learned from the interviews with arc benders and 5 stories of arc benders that I think you will appreciate. You might recognize this first arc bender. So it's Jessica Thomas, who you met earlier, the director of the NC State Business Sustainability Collaborative. And Jessica and I met through the B Corp movement. So B stands for benefit. And Jessica learned about the B Corp movement through a sustainable business accelerator program she was running. And I actually learned about B Corps through an internship between my first and second year of my MBA program with the nonprofit B Lab, which is a nonprofit that actually created this global movement. So just in case you've never heard of what a B Corp is, B Corp certification is to an entire company what USDA organic certification is to milk or fair trade certification is to coffee. So what B Corps are they're amazing businesses rather than just businesses that create great products. And beyond being businesses that are certified, it's also a global movement of business leaders who are committed to redefining success in business. And B Corps believe that you should maximize stakeholder value. So you should think about your impact on your employees, the environment, and your community. And you should think about business holistically. So some famous B Corps you might have heard of are 7th Generation, Patagonia, my personal favorite, Ben & Jerry's. Fun fact, I totally got to audit Ben & Jerry's and did a behind the scenes tour. They're amazing. And when I moved home to North Carolina, I landed a role at a B Corp, and that's how I met Jessica. And Jessica shared with me, interestingly enough, her vision of creating a clinic that connected students with companies that wanted to become certified B Corps, or at least to begin measuring their social and environmental impact. And what she didn't know at the time was that during my internship, I'd actually created a toolkit that helped students do just that in partnership with Net Impact. And so from there, Jessica took the toolkit that I created and launched the B Corp Clinic with a company called HQ Raleigh, their co-working space. And from there, it has grown into a world recognized program, as many of you know, that connects approximately 30 students across multiple universities with 4 to 6 companies every single semester. And really, it's also a program that's creating the future of mission-driven leaders, which I find so inspiring. But what I didn't know before the Archbenders Project is why Jessica was so passionate about sustainability and the B Corp movement. It turns out that Jessica was born in Miami and is part American and part Nigerian. And growing up, when she was young, her family actually moved to Nigeria because her father's an economics professor and he landed a job. And growing up, Jessica spent 10 years growing up between 2 worlds. During the school year, she would live in Africa, and in the summer, she'd come back to the States. And what she realized was these were 2 very different worlds. So in Africa, a lot of times there was a really closely tied and connected community, sometimes because they had to depend on each other. Jessica shared that there were times when the electricity would go out, and for days they wouldn't have access to dependable water. And then in direct contrast, she would come back to the States, and because of the way our systems are set up, we don't have to have a close relationship with our resources. We can kind of take them for granted. And so what Jessica really saw was that there was enormous need, and there was a gap between those needs and resources. And that one day she dreamed of creating a bridge to bridge the gap between need and resource. However, like many Archbenders, that isn't exactly how she started her career. While she was in Senegal, living in Senegal, she attended a school that was a French school, and she couldn't speak the language very well. So she ended up learning math and science, which is a universal language. And that led to her starting her career out as an engineer. Eventually, though, she went back to grad school, and that's when she realized her passion was for academia, and it really got her on the path that she is now at today. One of my goals for the Archbenders Project, though, was that I didn't want this to just be a storytelling project that showed people's shiny, perfect resumes. I wanted to understand not only why Archbenders, did what they did and how they went about changing the world. I also wanted to understand what obstacles had they overcome. What is the reality? And when I asked Jessica what was the biggest obstacle she had overcome, she shared with me something that blew me away. Jessica at one point thought she had landed her perfect job in academia, but one part of the role was fundraising. And it turns out that's not Jessica's favorite thing to do. And ultimately she was actually fired from the role. And anyone that knows Jessica, she is one of the most impressive people I've ever met. She's incredible. I still can't fathom how this happened. I still feel like they made a mistake, but my opinion doesn't matter. But the beautiful thing is Jessica didn't let this obstacle hold her back. She went on to find another amazing role in academia, and that led her to her role in creating the Business Sustainability Collaborative today. Beyond the B Corp Clinic, she's also helped create B Academics, a world-renowned nonprofit that connects academic leaders with the resources they need to empower future student leaders. And all in all, she has totally changed the world. And what I learned from Jessica's story is that this is the first big lesson, which is impact isn't a straight line. Oftentimes, our careers are a winding road, and we might not start out with a perfect job, or we might not even know our purpose early on. And if that's you, that is totally normal. Our lives are hopefully long, and our careers are typically very diverse. And so just know that it's okay to take time to realize your vision. So the next Archbender, one of the next Archbenders I interviewed is Seth Gross. He's the owner of Bull City Burger and Brewery and Pompieri Pizza in Durham. And if you've never been there, these restaurants are incredible. Seth started these companies with a vision of wanting to have a restaurant where he could bring his family to have American classics like beer, burgers, and pizza, and do so with food that had meat that was grass-fed and ingredients that weren't frozen or processed. Seth had a 30 years of restaurant experience. He graduated from the Culinary Institute, so he had a very impressive background. And both of his restaurants are now certified B Corps. However, there's one story that Seth told that just blew me away. And it starts with a dumpster. So every Sunday night, Seth would go behind his restaurants and would see this dumpster, and it was overflowing. It was so bad that oftentimes there were trash bags lining it and you couldn't even get up to the dumpster. I mean, we're talking epic. And it was shared by a handful of businesses and a few people. And so Seth was like, this is ridiculous. We have to do something. And so he checked in with his team and he shared with them, look, we're going to start small. We're going to start by sorting our trash. We're going to sort things into recyclables, compostables, and things that go in the landfill. It wasn't some perfect scenario. Some of his staff were not so thrilled about touching the waste. If you think about it, it's a restaurant, so it's not just your trash, it's the public's trash. But what's so incredible is by making this change over time, Seth and his team were able to limit their waste down to a tiny trash can of landfill waste per day. And if you start thinking about the impact and how that adds up over time, it's insane. And by the time that I interviewed Seth for ArcBenders, he shared that now sorting waste was just how things were done. It was part of their culture. And it was 4 to 5 years later, and he had not seen that dumpster overflow since. And what that really taught me is the power of starting where you are. All of us have the ability to start small. Arc bending does not have to be this huge thing. It can often start with a quick step where you see a problem and you take a small action. So it can be maybe you start a composting program at your place of employment, or maybe you go and volunteer with an organization that you're interested in, or maybe you even just vote with your dollars. So you try to support and buy from B Corps, or right now you go and support small businesses by doing takeout. Starting where you are can be simple and really powerful. Some arc benders started earlier than others. So our next arc bender is Danny Rosen, and growing up, Danny was a bit of a troublemaker. In middle school, at one point, Danny was told that he had more demerits than anyone else in his school, and he thought that was really cool at the time. It's not if you're a troublemaker. And interestingly enough, his troublemaking continued into high school. So one day, Danny and his friend Charlie got a diabolical plan to skip class. They discovered that there was a homecoming parade that was coming up, and all club leaders were allowed to skip class to work on a homecoming day float. The only problem was Charlie and Danny did not have a club. So they decided to make one, and they called it the Happy Club. Well, they realized they were about to get in trouble when students and teachers started asking them, well, what's the mission of this club, and does it have a charter? And so instead of getting in trouble, they decided to make the mission of the Happy Club, that the Happy Club was going to help make unhappy kids in unfortunate circumstances happy. And so where they started was they started doing these really fun and quirky fundraisers. You're actually gonna have to read his full interview to hear all of the unique ways that they raise money. And once they raised some funds, they then partnered with a local nonprofit that at the time shared the addresses of families in need. I don't know that that would happen anymore, but we'll go with it. And they would show up to these homes and buy presents, and they would do their own version of ring and run. So if you don't know what that is, they would go up, they would ring the doorbell, they would put presents on the porch and then run away, hide in the bushes, and then watch as the families were delighted by the fact they got unexpected holiday gifts. Eventually, the Happy Club was so successful, they partnered with a local nonprofit that was grown up called Operation Smile. And Operation Smile's mission is to provide free surgery to children with facial deformities like cleft lips and cleft palates. Through this, the Happy Club was so successful, and eventually Danny was invited to go volunteer as a scrub nurse in both the Philippines as well as Africa. And that was the first time he really understood how privileged he was and how much abject poverty was out there, and really like the need that existed across the world. And he got to meet the parents of these kids who had these surgeries, and he realized that these amazing fundraising events that he was hosting that were super fun actually absolutely changed lives. And that lesson really stuck with Danny throughout his life. The cool thing is that Operation Smile actually now has 900 Happy Club style clubs all across the world, inspired by Danny and Charlie's Happy Club. And on one of the worst days in our country's history, 9/11, when the Twin Towers were hit and 3,000 souls were lost, Danny remembered this lesson from his youth, and he decided that he wanted to do something. So Danny reached out to a group of his friends and colleagues, and he said, let's host a community concert to bring people together during this hard time and to raise money for the families of fallen heroes. And that's how Band Together for Our Heroes got started. The concert was a huge success. They allowed any first responders in our community to go to the concert for free. They flew down some heroes and who spoke to the audience, and they decided to keep doing this concert every single year. And over time, they started partnering with different nonprofits throughout the community. 19 years later, Band Together has grown into a nonprofit that raises more than $1 million every single year for a local nonprofit. I am still, like, my mind is still blown every time I hear this fact, because what I haven't mentioned about Danny is Danny did this outside of his full-time job. Danny is also the co-founder of a successful promotional products company called Brand Fuel. And through that work, he also makes an impact using his business as a force for good. And so what this teaches me is you have to leverage your unique skills. When I asked Danny what his skills were, he's like, he was so humble. He's like, I'm marginally good at a lot of things, which I don't agree with. Danny is incredible at bringing people together and being a connector and finding the fun in every opportunity. And he has used that time and time again throughout his life as a force for good. And so for all of us, one of the things that I highly encourage you to do is, even if you don't yet know what your purpose is, you can begin to explore, what are your unique skills? What are you like really talented at? And how might those things be a force for good in the long term? Eventually, I realized that ArcBenders was about so much more than taking photos, and I realized I wanted it to be a global project. So I put a call out to the global B Corp community, and that's how I was introduced to Tammy and Corey. They are the founders of Domi, and interestingly enough, their story starts at an intersection. Tammy had been living in Beijing for 11 years, and after having her first baby, she decided to move home to Taiwan because she was worried about the health impacts of pollution. She'd actually known the family and friends who had had major issues. But when she moved home to Taiwan, she found out that her hometown too had become polluted. So one day, she was at an intersection with Corey with her actually second child, and who was a baby at the time, and the baby was in the stroller. And when the light turned green, there was a group of motorbikes, and all of a sudden this group, this massive thing of smoke came up and started floating towards her baby right at stroller height. So Tammy scooped up her baby, ran away, and left Corey in the intersection wondering what in the world had just happened. On that day, Tammy made a decision, and the decision was she had to do something. Tammy and Corey decided that they had to do something. However, neither of them were environmentalists. Tammy had worked in fashion and media. Corey had been a serial entrepreneur, but neither of them really knew how they were going to solve the pollution problem. And so they started small, and they started by planting seeds. And what they learned was, when you plant seeds, you get kids interested. And when you have children interested, you get their parents interested. And once you have people passionate about this idea of change, you can inspire them to make other changes in their life, like installing LEDs in their house. Or in this case, Domi actually made a really cool timer that would automatically turn off people's appliances when they weren't using them. And eventually Domi started thinking bigger. They actually brought the B Corp movement to Asia on their own, which is incredible. And they began working with government officials as well as business leaders in larger industries to inspire them to begin making big change. And the one thing that Tammy hit home time and time again is our fourth lesson, which is that when you find the problem that you're willing to dedicate years of your life to solving, you first have to believe that you can be the one to make the change that you seek. You don't have to know how, you just have to make the decision and have faith that you can figure it out. And throughout the ARC Benders interviews, I found this and heard this story time and time again, that ARC Benders would make that decision and commit to it. And that relates really well to our final ARC Bender story of the day. So you may know Maggie Kane. She's an NC State alumni. And Maggie is the founder of A Place at the Table in downtown Raleigh. But Maggie's story starts when she was younger. Growing up, Maggie had a hard time fitting in, and she felt lonely a lot. She didn't have friends through high school, and unfortunately, even when she went to college, she still struggled making close friends. After graduation, she ended up finding herself at Loved Ones Ministry, which is a day shelter. And through that, she got to meet people who were experiencing homelessness. They would often come in to get some coffee and escape the streets. And through that work, Maggie started following her friends throughout their lives. And that often brought her to soup kitchens. So if you've never been to a soup kitchen, the way they work is they have a really long line. You wait in a line, you come in, they hand you your food, and then you sit, you eat, and then you leave very quickly because they're having to serve such a high volume of people at the same time. And yet when Maggie's friends had anniversaries or birthdays, Maggie would offer to take them out to eat. And most times they would choose to go to places like Golden Corral or K&W Cafeteria. And so she started asking them, why? Why do you choose to go to these places? And what she learned was there were a few reasons. So first off, when you go to those places, they greet you, and people loved it was really valuable to be treated like a human. And then also they had a choice of what kind of food they might want to eat. And then most importantly, they could stay a while. They really had a place where they could sit, and Maggie would oftentimes spend hours getting to know her new friends during these lunches or dinners. And Maggie at that moment made a choice that she wanted to solve this problem. And what she learned was she discovered the pay what you can model. So if you've never been to A Place at the Table, it's a pay what you can cafe. And the way it works is when you come in, you have the option to pay a suggested price. So all of the menu prices are suggested, or you can pay half of the price. Or if you don't have the means, you can volunteer for your meal, or you can actually pay it forward by either tipping or by buying these amazing tokens that can then be given away. The really powerful thing about Maggie's story is the time between when Maggie had the idea for A Place at the Table and the time when it opened was 4 years. Maggie spent 4 years bringing her vision to life. And of course, throughout that time, there were people who questioned whether or not this would work. They wondered, would people take advantage of the system? And would it be a sustainable model? The incredible thing is the first year that A Place at the Table was open, more than 8,000 meals were given, and 25,000 meals were paid it forward. And the company really, and A Place at the Table really depends on volunteer support, and over 24,000 volunteer hours were logged. Even more importantly, A Place at the Table started bringing together the haves and have-nots in our community. And it gave people truly a place where they felt like they belong, all people. And the story started spreading. So within his first year, A Place at the Table was featured on the Today Show. Near the end of last year, Good Morning America actually came and surprised Maggie with a spa day, and they decorated the cafe for the holidays. They're about to expand soon. And right now, in light of the crisis we're going through, they are open Wednesdays through Sundays, offering curbside pickup for anyone who needs a meal, which is so powerful. But the other big lesson that I learned from Maggie is that Maggie is the first to say she couldn't have done this on her own. Maggie is incredible at inspiring people and inviting them to be part of her vision and her dream. A Place at the Table has 16 board members. It also has, I believe, 12 advisory board members. While she was building it, Maggie was able to enlist the help of one of our top restaurant leaders to help her understand how to create a cafe that was going to be successful. She found a lawyer that pro bono helped set up her 501c3. She also found an accountant who helped her learn how to take care of the financial side of the nonprofit. And beyond that, there have been so many people who have contributed and supported A Place at the Table's mission. And what Maggie's story really teaches us all is arguably the most important story and most important lesson of all, which is just changing the world as a team sport. In our society, we often think of the heroes, you know, the lone leader who's incredible and gets all the credit, or the lone genius. But in all reality, when you're changing the world, there's oftentimes a huge team effort that goes into that. And there's so much power that comes from community. For me, you might be wondering how this changed my life. Well, first off, I love helping others, clearly, but I actually really struggled accepting help myself. And in light of that, I had to learn to accept help. And Maggie really taught me that. So where that landed me was 3 months into the project, actually quit my job, which I don't recommend you do. Do not quit your job for a storytelling project. It's not the best strategy. I don't have any regrets. It all worked out. The reason why was I didn't want to wait to do the things that I was inspired to do. And thankfully I had a community there waiting for me. Right around the time I left my full-time role at a social enterprise, Maggie and Danny started hosting community leaders coming together at A Place at the Table. And so they were there for me through all of this. And I actually ended up raising funds. I launched a crowdfunding campaign to take a road trip up and down the East Coast to raise awareness about ARC vendors as a project, and also to interview ARC vendors. I went to Richmond, DC, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, and that was life-changing. And beyond that, if we really look at the top 5 lessons, in many ways, these lessons reflect my life. Impact for me certainly was not a straight line. I didn't even really know my purpose until I was sitting at a bar in my late 20s. And before that, I really had started where I was. I'd volunteered. What I learned over the last few years is that my unique skills are using marketing and strategy to help mission-driven organizations thrive and to really help grow them. And also to really take the lessons that I learned from ARC vendors and help ARC vendors have a community so they can bring their ideas to life. And when it came time for me to realize that this was my mission, I decided I was ready to be the change. And that is how I ended up creating the FISO accelerators, the Figure Shit Out Accelerator. While the name is funny, it really reflects what it's like to be an ARC vendor. So we bring together this group of ARC vendors over 6 months. They really get the support and accountability that they need in community. And in many ways, this program is the product of everything that I learned from the ARC Vendors Project. We've had more than 15 entrepreneurs go through the program so far. And now, in light of what's happening, we're going to be taking it virtually this year, which I'm really, really excited. It's launching in May. But now, in light of this has been some of the most rewarding work that I've ever done. Creating this program, I've also consulted with a handful of B Corps, and I'm now going to ask you the question my friend asked me. What would you do if you didn't have to worry about money? Or maybe the better question is, what would you do if you weren't afraid? I know that changing the world feels pretty big and daunting, but I hope that you've learned today that it doesn't have to be that way. Arc bending can be as simple as starting by being kind, by being a good neighbor, a good friend, a good family member. And then through your kindness, maybe you might start changing your habits to limit your impact. Or you might donate to causes that you're passionate about. Or you might vote with your dollars by supporting mission-driven organizations or volunteering your time. And when the time comes that you figure out that problem that you're willing to dedicate your life to, I hope that you'll build community around it and that you'll find people that believe in you and believe in your dreams. If there's one thing that I've learned from all of these ArcBender interviews, it's that if you want to make an impact and you're willing to commit to it, it's only a matter of time. So thank you all again. The one thing I do want to make sure that you know is all of these ArcBender stories, like the full stories, are available at www.wearethearcbenders.com. And if you have any questions or you need any support, please don't hesitate to let me know how I can help.
Awesome. Thank you, Christina. Everyone, we can give some virtual claps. Thank you. Thank you. We have time for maybe one or two questions here. Grace Williamson asks if you have any FISO resources publicly available. I think that question was answered. Was it listed on the website there? Or could you type?
Well, so there's the ArcBenders website, but actually that's a great question. I wrote a 100-page ebook that's free that you can get at, here, I'm gonna put it in the chat. It's bit.ly/FISO guide. So like as a great place to start, that is a really helpful resource. Also, in light of everything that's happened, we're gonna make the accelerator program Pay What You Can, Pay When You Can, inspired by Maggie. So I'm also excited because in light of everything, I don't want anyone who's trying to innovate right now or drive change to not have access to community.
That's amazing. Awesome. Well, we might have time for one more question. I'm looking to the chat to see if anyone has listed any questions here. But if not, we will have a group photo. I'd love to hand it back to Jessica.
Yes, absolutely. Jordan, if you'll put up the closing slide. I just want to add my thank you to Christina. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. Thank you so much for sharing the lessons that you've learned, your inspiration. I'm absolutely honored to be a part of your story. And so definitely, I think we're gonna wrap up there. We're sharing here Christina's contact on Twitter and also her email. So I encourage folks, and I think Christina would encourage folks to reach out if you've got any follow-up comments or questions. Here I'm going to hand it over to Svetlana Gestad, who is also part of our BSc team, a BSc associate. Svetlana is the president of the undergraduate Net Impact chapter, and Svetlana leads marketing for the Business Sustainability Collaborative. So you've seen her tweeting, live tweeting, posting on Instagram over the course of today's event. I'm going to hand it over to Svetlana, who's just going to close things out for us and organize us to get a group photo. So Svetlana, if you're there.
Yes, that was so amazing. Thank you so much, Christina and Jessica and Jordan. What a great event. And I think we'll needed that during this times. So I would encourage you guys to maybe tag us and post your one takeaway. And I would love to share that on our social media. And yeah, I think it's time to take a group photo. I'm super excited. We have 50 people right now. If you don't like your picture to be taken, totally fine. You can adjust your video preferences. And I was thinking maybe we can do something fun. So I think I'm either gonna grab my cat or ukulele, I still don't know. But if you wanna grab something that is keeping you entertained in your house during this difficult times, and we'll take a screenshot. What do you guys think?
And maybe we'll stop sharing, Jordan, so we can get the full screen.
Ta-da! Yay! Green screen. Yay! That's perfect. So many beautiful people. I'm glad we all connected. And I think I'm heading it back to, oh, Jessica. Yes, with a hat.
Yes. So I'm just going to say one final thank you to everyone for joining us. We know these are really challenging times, and we know time is so precious, but also really appreciate the opportunity to connect with everyone, hopefully inspire each other. And so thanks everybody for joining us this afternoon. Special thanks to Christina for sharing your inspiration, to Jordan and Svetlana for helping to plan and host this event, and the whole BSE team. And so I just want to let folks know we are recording this session. I'll be following up with a recording of this session. We're going to post it on our website. And Christina mentioned the B Corp Clinic, which was really our flagship program here in the BSC. I'll be sharing a follow-up opportunities to get involved in the B Corp Clinic. We're wrapping up the clinic this semester. In the next few weeks, we've been running it entirely virtually, continuing to make progress, working with local companies to help them improve their impact, and other opportunities to get involved with the BSC and with Net Impact. So again, thank you so much to Jordan and Svetlana for your partnership through Net Impact and through your leadership. Y'all inspire me every day and give me hope for the future. And that goes to every single one of our students out there. So everybody stay strong, stay connected, stay safe, and thank you so much once again for joining us. All right, take care.